I had the chance today to speak with a friend who is one of the fortunate ones who has a job right now. And he's even more fortunate than that because he enjoys riding his bicycle. And people are still allowed to ride bicycles. So he has really thrown himself into riding his bicycle. He only works 3 days a week, 12-hour days, and he has the other days. And he rides his bicycle. He just rides it away. That's what he does. He gets on his bicycle and he just rides away until he no longer wants to be riding his bicycle. And then he's a few hours away from his house. And he has to ride back. And each day he says, "Oh, I really have to stop sooner. This is exhausting." And then the next day he just rides away until he wants to be at home. And that's when he turns around and spends 3 hours riding back. He's going to go on really long bike rides. And he was telling me that a lot of people are riding bicycles right now. That he passes about what is it, 20 or 30 people an hour on the other side of the road? That's a lot. That's very uncommon around here. Because he's out in the middle of nowhere. He's way out there. On dirt roads, and he's passing lots of people, and everybody's so happy to see each other. They aren't supposed to really get near each other, so they stand on the side of the road and they just pass each other on the bicycle. So hello lasts for about 1 second. But still, they're happy, smiling, wave. Sometimes say something. And he said it's so nice to see people appreciating being outside so much. A lot of people in the world still really cannot go outside. The parks in Burlington are closed. They've closed a lot of the major hiking trails in Vermont, so many people can't even go hiking. But some people can still go outside on their bikes, and they love it so much. And beyond that, they love seeing each other. So excited to see somebody. And to see someone outside is just amazing. You get to be outside and see someone. It's incredible. So we see that there is good happening. And the good is basically a shift in our minds. A basic shift in our minds. Of course, it's not all good. Hearing from someone today, I was talking to someone today about this, and they were telling me about how there's talk of maybe having a two-class society. People who have had the virus and are immune and therefore safe and can go out and work again. Other people have to be monitored. And they have to wear masks and they have to sulk around. Have to be kept away from everybody else. And how strangely that means, especially as more studies come out that demonstrate that the virus isn't as dangerous as we thought. People now want to get it. People are trying to collude in order to get the virus. Have coronavirus parties, as they call them. So they can get it and then be free. But some people aren't allowed to, and some people feel like it's too risky, and it's very confusing. And as I listened to him talk, the main thing I heard was confusion and desperation and this exhaustion of having been afraid and alone for so long. It eventually just becomes exhausting. But then it's so confusing because we don't want to believe that we made a mistake. We put forth all of these efforts. We don't want to think that we did the wrong thing. And so we end up trying to hold ourselves up with a kind of a pride and certainty. But on the other side, there really are crises in the world. There are real crises in the world, far more severe than the coronavirus. And there's also fear that if this is shown to be not, that our reaction to this wasn't very good, that we didn't solve the problem, we didn't respond perfectly, then we're going to use that as an excuse to not take action on the far more difficult issues and far more dangerous issues that we face. And say, well, you see, nobody really knows what's going to happen. Maybe global warming isn't really that dangerous, and maybe nuclear war will just never happen, and maybe technology will turn out to be always good. Who knows? So let's just not worry about it. In the very first talk I gave on this, I said what's most important at this time is that we not get caught either in panic, entanglement in the issue, so that we're driven by fear, or avoidance, ignorance of the issue, so that we're driven by delusion. And speaking with this individual today, hearing his experience, it sounds like, sadly, a lot of us have gone down one of those two roads. And now people who have gotten stuck on the two ends of this spectrum, holding two extreme views, are just fighting with each other. Now there are protests breaking out, saying, let us out of our homes. Other people are very mad at those people. Everybody's mad, fighting over this. What does that mean? Maybe it means that a lot of people push back, and a lot of people push forward, adding in both directions to the problem of the fact that many people are just sick, are just in physical danger, and scared of dying, of suffering, perhaps even more scared of being put on a ventilator, having their body poisoned by that very machine, while also being damaged by the virus, coming out of it permanently disabled. Some people consider that a fate worse than death, but they also don't want to die. There's so much difficulty around the sickness itself, around the fact that we die itself. And added on to that, maybe we're trying to solve that problem with monitoring, with the state, with companies, more and more watching us. There's less and less freedom. Or that other rights are taken away in the name of, we have to keep you safe. And more people demand, please keep us safe. because we just don't trust anyone anymore. Perhaps this is just going to be an opportunity to embody the deep distrust we have for ourselves. We have so little trust in ourselves, so little faith in ourselves now. And since we don't have faith in ourselves, we don't think we can make good decisions. We don't know what to do anymore. The world is so confusing. I don't know how to understand it. Well, then we look around and we don't trust anyone. If we don't trust ourselves, how are we going to trust anyone? And yet we also wish that other people who were trusted would take control over the situation and keep me safe from all these bad people who aren't trustworthy. Because I know they're not trustworthy because I'm not trustworthy. We don't have faith in ourselves. We don't have faith in our nature. We don't have faith in our beauty. We don't have faith in the possibility that love is at our core. Instead of that, we feel like selfishness is at our core. We've been being told that for centuries, actually, but certainly decades. We're told that that's what Darwin taught, and Darwin is the high priest of the modern age. Darwin said that everybody's selfish, and it's all about survival. It's the survival of the fittest, and the fit ones are the ones who eat the ones who aren't fit. And it's all about the perpetuation of your genes. And that's what it is. The gene is selfish. We've been told this. The situation is actually far more complicated than this. If you look at nature, you see far more cooperative relationships than competitive relationships. But we've been told that, and we believe it. We think we're inherently selfish, inherently fearful. That the ultimate goal is to survive, and we're not going to do it. We're not going to succeed even at that. So we lose faith in ourselves, both in terms of our ability and in our ethics. We feel like I don't have ethics because all this is about survival. We want to feel a different way, but we feel like we're just adding it on and manipulating ourselves so that we act that way, even though it's not our true nature. So we don't trust other people either because we feel like it's not their true nature. So we want somebody to control all of us and disempower us. Will you please just disempower us and prevent us from causing harm? And we know that there are confusing problems, that weapons are more and more available, that it's easier to do damage, that individuals have more and more power to destroy. So we're more and more afraid, and we know that there's a big problem. We don't know how to deal with it. But we just hope that there will be more power over, and so more and more people will be disempowered. You're like, that's the solution. And we'll call it sacrifice for the benefit of the world. In any case, please just keep us safe. Some of that is happening. And on the other side, there's a sense of, whatever. I don't know what to do. Let's not do anything. There's probably no climate crisis anyway. There's probably no technology crisis anyway. Artificial intelligence or whatever it would be. And look, we've gone decades without blowing up the world. Probably we just never will. It'll be fine, don't worry about it. And besides, it doesn't even matter. Because we're all just physical stuff. And the only goal of life is to enjoy yourself, to get what you want. To be free to do what you want. This also is part of the religion that we've been taught. We've been taught about individualism and that the purpose of our individual lives is to fulfill our individual desires. We know that the practice of externalizing harm is common and accepted. It's normal. It's the most common way to make a profit. You mine an existing resource. You don't reap the consequences of the harm that you cause. That's the way it's done. But it doesn't matter because all those resources are just resources. They're just material objects designed to experience pleasure, and I should be able to experience the pleasure that I want and do what I want in the way that I want. Because none of it matters, and besides, what do we know anyway? and we descend into ignorance. And I'm very concerned that as this crisis passes, which it will do eventually, that the loneliness and the despair that has been cultivated at this time will continue. And that we'll use this to show, look, crises don't really matter. We won't take the serious actions needed to resolve the much more serious crises that we have. Crises that demand at least, actually far more than, the kind of societal change that we have proven that we can do over the past few months. And so yes, this sort of dystopian world may come about. In certain ways it is coming about. But this isn't all that's happening. And we have a chance right here, right now, as a community, to take the steps needed to bring forth a solution. To bring forth a real solution. An actual solution. We have that ability. We have that power. And so we should begin by considering the power that we have already demonstrated. We have shown that if we're afraid enough, and if we all share the same view on something, we can completely revolutionize a society in a matter of weeks. The world, the whole world, we can change it. We've shown that in order to save a few million lives, we are willing to shut down the world economy, to cause a severe depression. We're willing to do that. We have proven that now. And honestly, a few months ago, if you asked around, said, so, let's say that I told the world, and it believed me, you know, if we shut down the world economy, cause a major depression, we can save a few million lives. You think people would do that? If you asked me that, I would have said no. And I would have been wrong. Because we did it. It's incredible. It's amazing. And we should, at the very least, feel empowered about that. If we can do that once, we can do it again. And next time, we can do it better. This is just like everything. You do something the first time, you're not that good at it. Second time, you're a lot better at it. Third time, you're often pretty good at it. So we need this kind of revolution to happen a few more times. And we can get it right eventually. We can. We can do this. And as we move through this, our skill set, improving, will allow us to deal with bigger and bigger problems, more and more serious problems, and gradually we'll actually think of that as fun. We'll think of it as enjoyable. It'll be neat. Like, wow, here's a challenge. Let's deal with it. Let's deal with it together. Let's see this time if we can cause a huge world revolution, not based on fear, but based on compassion. Think we can do it? I bet we can do it. Let's try. It's harder, I know, but that's okay. We have greater skills now. And we'll come up with crazy solutions. Things that no one's ever thought of. Beyond that, the good news. There's been a slowdown in the crises caused by the human mind. That is really good news. We're emitting much less carbon right now than we were just recently. Congratulations, humanity. Let's take advantage of this. We got a little head start here, dealing with these problems. There's been a slight slowdown in technological development. That's exciting. And interestingly, the world has come together a little bit more. Does that mean that it's less likely that we'll have terminal nuclear war? I hope. There's a little bit of evidence for that. But here we are, as a world, working together on something at a level that, to my knowledge, is unprecedented. That's incredible. In the past, we've pointed at the ozone layer as an example of a time when we all came together and did a good job. But this is done at a much higher level, more cooperation. Again, in a way that we might not have thought possible just recently. We have these huge problems. The problems caused by the human mind are caused by individual minds, but also by the collective global mind, our cooperative understanding of things. The way that we do things together in cooperation. I'm not referring to some mystical kind of collective consciousness that is debatable. I just mean the ordinary thing. People work together to do things that no one person knows how to do. So no one person can make a computer. No one person knows how to make a computer. And yet, people can collectively make lots of computers. There's a kind of collective intelligence there. So it's this collective intelligence and also collective delusion, collective selfishness that is causing the huge problems in the world caused by the human mind. I've mentioned a few of them in this talk. And it has seemed as if the only way we can deal with that huge problem of a global intelligence driving toward an end that isn't good for anyone is if we have some kind of vast global cooperation. People have talked about a world government or some kind of maybe artificial intelligence that will run the world somehow. And yet, look, we just cooperated really well. Again, wasn't perfect. We have a long way to go. We have work to do. But once again, this was unprecedented. It's our first shot at this. And in any case, we did it. We cooperated. We cooperated without a whole lot of scientific information. We cooperated without a whole lot of emotional maturity. But consider the next time, for example, just as one example, we consider the climate crisis, we have a much better scientific understanding of that issue than the coronavirus. And we could conceivably have, now that we've moved through this process, have a much more sophisticated and mature emotional understanding of that issue. And if we can do that, we can the second time do it much better. But beyond that, this is an opportunity to see that a great deal of the damage done, maybe most of the damage done in this case, was caused by our minds. And that is the great challenge of our species. To see that life is about the purification and cultivation of our minds. That is the most important thing. That there is nothing more dangerous on this planet than the human mind. That has to be seen very clearly because sadly, that's the main thing that it is demonstrating at this time. It's harmfulness. However, we should also know that it's been shown again and again through the centuries by millions of people that if we cultivate our minds, if we develop our minds, then there is nothing more beneficial on this planet than the human mind. Our own minds are the most dangerous thing on this planet and potentially the most beneficial thing. To see that is the great challenge and the great opportunity of our species. To see that is very difficult, but it is possible. And this crisis gives us the chance to see that clearly. And so when I imagine a way forward, I imagine that we take advantage of this loneliness and realize, wow, it's really nice to connect with people. And with that, history will change. If enough people realize just that, history will change. I imagine, and I consider this, that once again we connect with nature as we have done for the vast majority of our history. And we realize that we are nature. And nature is not the enemy. And we aren't the enemy of nature. Isn't that nature stops at the surface of my skin and I begin? It's not that I stop at the surface of my skin and nature begins. It's all nature. This attachment to being human falls away, and then finally this human mind and human body becomes a tool. Something that can be used for the benefit of all living things. And because we can do that, we can be the most beneficial. We can have the most beneficial mind. Because it's possible for us to see the value in all living things. And to live by that. To actually live by that. To change how we live. Out of love for all living things. To be willing to actually sacrifice. To even sacrifice our own lives. For the benefit of all living things. This is possible. That we no longer think my life is special. My life is more or less valuable than some other life. It's not like that. There's just this one life. We are able to realize that. And how does this happen? At the basis, at the bottom, at the beginning, it happens because we see that our goal is the cultivation of our minds. That is the issue. The ultimate issue isn't a virus. What we should be afraid of isn't a virus. What we should be excited about isn't the elimination of a virus. What we should be afraid of are the negative, unskillful qualities in our own minds. We should be excited about the elimination of those qualities. Beyond that, we should be excited about liberation, enlightenment, the ability to live according to wisdom. With that realization that that's what life is about, we start to live that way, and we realize it's hard to live that way. But that's the challenge. That's the adventure. That's what this is all about. And happily, there isn't anything more fulfilling than that adventure. That is safety. That is true security. And so we want more of it, and we see that the best way to get more of that is through connection in community. And so we naturally want that. Even just for ourselves, we want that. And so we enter a community where people are actually assessing everything that is done. according to its benefit for the world, and beyond that, are clarifying and maturing their ability to assess that by seeing that it's difficult to assess it with an uncultivated, immature mind. And the basis of this immaturity isn't just mere lack of information or lack of intellectual capacity. On the contrary, is basically emotional avoidance or emotional clarification. But because of how we feel, our thoughts are confused. Because of how we feel, our thoughts are clear. We realize that it is in an awareness of our present experience that we purify our minds. And the easiest way to do that is in connection, in community. And so we have methods, highly developed methods of dealing with our experience, learning how to experience more and more skillfully, gaining the powers, for example, of concentration, of equanimity, of clarity, gaining those skills so that we become more and more trustworthy in our assessment of situations, so that completely different solutions come up. Totally different solutions come up that are counterintuitive, that don't make sense. If people come, for example, to a place like this and they see how we live, it doesn't make any sense until you realize that it is directed toward the cultivation of our minds, and it is informed by minds that have been cultivated. And so, of course, it's going to look different and not make sense. And solutions that we come up with won't make sense. Again, not to talk about this too much, but early on, when this virus came to be known, I carefully did research on it, looked at it carefully, considered the situation, had a chance to, as you know I enjoy doing, dove into the history books, learned about past pandemics, which is fascinating, considered the impact that probably has on people's emotional state, considered the world as it is today and the way communication functions right now, considered how dangerous it's likely that this was, considered the type of illness that it is, considered our unique situation, and said, okay, according to all of this, I recommend that right now, right away, we go out and get the virus. Bring it back here and make sure that everyone gets it. That's the best possible thing to do. And so I said that in a meeting. Everyone, this I propose, an excellent idea. Let's do it. And everyone said, what? I said, well, I'm not going to make you do it. He said, well, let's not do it. I said, okay. So the next day I said, let's do it. I said, no. I said, okay. Next day I said, let's do it. I said, no. I said, okay, fine. Fine. I think this is the right thing to do. This is the only way that we can both flatten the curve and shorten the curve. Beyond that, if we get it, we can be of service later in case this is a terrible pandemic. There's very shaky evidence of this whole you get reinfected thing at this time, and so let's do it. But if you say no, that's fine. This sort of solution, which you may agree with or you may not. I'm not claiming that you do this sort of mental cultivation and you're always right about everything. I'm not claiming that you know everything. That would be absurd. But I am saying that kinds of creativity emerge that can't be understood with a mind based in selfishness, fear, and the deep desire to avoid feelings, to avoid our nature. And when this creativity comes forth in community, when a collective intelligence is formed based on that, then you have something absolutely magical, because that can compete, that can cooperate with, in mysterious ways, the mainstream mindset. That can compete with it and take its resources in certain ways, but it can also cooperate with it and allow it to become mature and clarify and find its own strength in other ways. That can both work against but also work with the mainstream human mind that has caused such terrible problems in the world. This is astonishing. There isn't a clear line between them, you see. People think you're in a monastery, you're far away, you're in your little community, and that's distant from the world. But that's delusion. There's no line. Where's the line? When people come here, we celebrate. Why? Because it's proof that there isn't a line. When people leave, we celebrate. Why? Because it's proof there isn't a line. We're interacting with people all the time. I suppose I interact with more people than most people. Every day I'm interacting with people. All of us are invited to that. We're constantly inviting you. Please interact with people. Sometimes people resist it, but we encourage it. Connect with each other, connect with everyone. Where is this line? It's delusional. There isn't one. As we cultivate, we're impacting the world. And as we cultivate this collective intelligence, it merges with, but also transforms, the mainstream mindset. And this new intelligence then can create a different sort of order in the world. Here, of course, we have lots of rules. Of course we do. The world has rules. We have rules here. But those rules are made, ideally, by people who have directly confirmed that when people are completely free, we are completely good. People who know that, and therefore know that every rule is used in order to replace another rule. That we know that the rule is inherently problematic, but people who are stuck in rules that aren't designed for their ultimate liberation need other rules that are designed for their ultimate liberation. When they follow those rules, and ultimately they attain ultimate liberation and are free from rules. Of course, that isn't enough. A person can become free from the whole world, be bigger than the world, but that isn't enough. There's something even beyond that, because then a person is invited to become a leader. And what is a leader in this way of life? It's someone who, having become free of all rules, lives within the world for the benefit of all beings. Someone who has become bigger than the world, but then lives within the world. It's a great challenge, of course, to discover a mind that's larger than the world. But compassion means that we fit that very mind into the world for the benefit of all. And that leadership impacts the community so that the rules are designed to free people, that a new kind of intelligence, a new kind of wisdom can burst forth. And so then the basic message is, you are fundamentally trustworthy. You are not fundamentally broken. You do not need to be fixed. You need to be free. And yes, a lot of the things you need to be freed from we think are real and true. For example, our desires. We think, my desires are really who I am and really what I aim for. They're my true goals. And we discover, no, that isn't freedom, that's slavery. Or the sense of what I am. I am just made of physical stuff, and that's the entirety of it. We free ourselves from that. Discover that was just an idea. The very fact of believing that is evidence against it. The very experience of that belief is evidence against it. And so we become free from these beliefs that we've been trained to have, from these tendencies that we've been trained to maintain. And in discovering that freedom, we find an awareness that is actually capable of solving these problems. Because however much control we wish would be held over us, the issue that people seem to miss is that the question of what is it that has that control? We want people who have the same problems as us to have control over us. Or we empower those very problems in machines that learn, these systems that we produce, but they're made by, and they are intentionally designed to hold exactly the problems that have brought us to this point. The systems that we have in our minds that are causing the problems are just being automated and becoming even more powerful. The thing that has the power, is that free from the thing that caused the problems? This is hard to face. It's why it's so difficult for us, because the problem of the mind is held in each individual, and all these individuals have all this power and they can destroy everything, and it's getting worse and worse and more dangerous. I don't know what to do about it. The world is so complicated, I don't know how to understand it. That's true on the one side. On the other side, the vast systems that have power over everything. How do you purify that? We don't know. But we can't know with a mind that's limited to desire, to measurement, to clinging, to ignorance. To the ignorance of believing that our thoughts about things accurately represent them. The sense that my thought about it basically is it. We become free from clinging. We become free from thinking. We become free from self-centered awareness. And in actually becoming free of that, a new kind of awareness emerges. And if we cultivate that, we can hold it collectively. And that is very difficult to achieve, but it is capable of solving these problems. And we see that over the centuries. We see that there are solutions. The issue is it's very difficult to distribute these solutions. That is true. But we ask why? Why is it hard to distribute these solutions? Because people don't see that the basic issue is the cultivation, the purification of our own minds. And why don't we see that? We don't see it because, to put it very bluntly, we refuse to face the problem of death. And we've put enormous resources into preventing ourselves from facing the problem of death over the centuries. But this is a chance for us, a chance to actually face that. And when we face the problem of death, without even needing to know why, we realize that the basic issue is in our own mind, our own way of seeing death. And once we transform that, the path has begun. That is laying the groundwork for the distribution of this solution, so that a different mind, a mind that's free of the problem, is set forth in resolving it. we have the chance to actually face this problem of death. When we face that problem truly, and we realize that the main limiting factor in our inability to deal with it is our lack of connection. And so we make connections with good friends, and making connections with good friends, we get personal benefit, but we also gain a kind of collaboration of mind that can compete with, but also in positive ways collaborate with the mainstream mind. And that's our immediate service, but if we continue on using the rules, using the systems, using the techniques to further cultivate our minds, then we awaken to that which doesn't die. Truly awaken to that which doesn't die. Because we do that a little bit, and instead of really discovering that which doesn't die, we just get an idea about it, and we try to import the true experience of liberation into mental ideation, into conceptual proliferation, into clinging to ideas, to concepts, to conceptualization. Because of that, true spirituality becomes often evil religion. Becomes something we'd be better off without. But if we actually become liberated from body and mind, directly experience that which doesn't die, then for compassion that has no ground, we engage with the world and offer solutions to its problems within its conditions. Because we have faced this problem, cultivated relationships, purified our minds, realized liberation, we're capable of compelling people to set aside wrong views, practice beneficial activities. We allow humanity to realize we have the true power to allow people to realize we shouldn't destroy life. And we have the ability to change so that we don't have to. We have the deep confidence because we can actually do that. We can actually do that. This place is proof of that. We have proven that. And beyond that, we have now proven that we're capable of transforming our world society in a matter of weeks. That simply has to be motivated by, guided by, an intelligence that didn't create the problems that necessitate vast world transformation. But we know how to do that, and more people are able to face death, at least over the past few weeks, realize loneliness, realize the importance of connection, realize the importance of actually solving that problem, and we have the confidence to know we can make it a real change. This is an incredible opportunity. So it's not surprising that as the world crumbles, more and more people want to come here. There's a sense of it. There's a feeling of it. And there's a desperation in their words as they contact us and ask, how can I come? How can I get involved? And so the most important thing to see is that each of these steps has been clearly described. Many people have actually taken these steps. And here we are at a critical moment in human history when we've just proven that we can change the world when there's a threat. It's still just a threat outside of ourselves, though. But beyond that, we're at a point in human history when it seems inconceivable that we're going to solve these problems without facing the one thing that is most difficult for human beings to face. That is that what needs to be done is a systematic cultivation purification, and liberation of our minds. But the very mind that I trust the most, that has guided my life, and the very collective mind that's guiding the world, is exactly the thing that has to be relinquished. And a skillful mind that has compassion for all beings, no longer based on attachment and clinging, on ego and self, or on conceptualization, ideation, mere human mental understanding, that a mind free of that bursting wisdom, that mind is the most important element to be cultivated and shared in the world. All of this, we know how to do it. None of this is say, well, but we're not really sure what happens then. What's needed is our total dedication right now for the total realization of this awakening. And that, yes, is a sacrifice. Yes, it is. To sacrifice our attachments, to sacrifice our views and ideas, to sacrifice our fixed sense of self. Well, yes, it's tough. Absolutely. As I told people, this will break you. So the last thing most of us want to happen. So they're willing to do anything other than that. But I can tell you, when this you has been broken, you realize the only thing that was broken was the cage that love was trapped in. That is the only thing that got broken. It was never you. You were not destroyed. You were free. This is the opportunity. In fact, the responsibility that we have. Oh, please, for your benefit, for the benefit of those who are suffering so much right now, suffering terribly right now. There are many people suffering terribly. And for the benefit of all living things, take advantage of this path. Practice it fully. And be of inconceivable